I never thought I'd see the day when the woman who used to slip violation letters under my door over things like a faded welcome mat would be standing in my parking lot surrounded by police still clutching a pair of bolt cutters she'd used to slice through the lock on my Jeep. The worst part, she didn't even know that same Jeep was part of an active police operation. That single snap of metal didn't just break a lock, it shattered years of silence I'd been keeping in this neighborhood. My name's Adrian Colebrook, and I've lived in Clearwater Shores for 7 years, a quiet condo community near the coast in Florida. Or at least it used to be quiet. When I bought my place, I thought I'd found peace. I work long hours as a supply chain supervisor. Nothing fancy, but it's steady work. I make sure products get from warehouses to stores. I don't bother anyone. I pay my dues. I follow the rules. And yet somehow I've spent years being treated like I don't belong. Mostly by one person. Her name's Judith Madsen, vice president of the HOA board. Picture a woman in her late 50s, gray-streaked bob, buttoned-up blouses, and a permanent frown carved into her face like it's been there for decades. The kind of person who corrects you before you finish a sentence, who carries a clipboard like it's a weapon. She doesn't just enforce the rules, she lives for them. When I first moved in, I thought she was just particular. Everyone knew Judith. People joked about her HOA surveillance. But as time went on, I realized I wasn't just another resident to her. I was her favorite target. She'd leave notes on my door about parking too close to the curb, even when my tires were perfectly aligned. She'd send warning emails about trash bins, though mine were never the ones out late. She once accused me of playing loud music at midnight, except I was at work until 2 a.m. that night. I let it go. I told myself not to give her the satisfaction. I had bigger things to worry about: my job, my family, my peace. I thought ignoring her would make her stop. But people like Judith don't stop when you stay silent. They take silence as permission. Then came that morning, a Saturday. Early quiet, still cool before the Florida heat rolled in. I walked out with my work bag slung over my shoulder, ready to head out for an extra shift, and that's when I saw her crouched beside my midnight blue Jeep, bolt cutters gleaming in the sun. She looked like a burglar, not a board member. I froze for a second, trying to process what I was seeing. The lock on my Jeep's wheel, the one I'd put on after someone tried to break in years ago, was halfway cut. Then came the sound, a sharp clank, as the lock fell to the pavement. Judith straightened up, brushing her hands together like she'd just done the neighborhood a favor. Finally, she said under her breath, "We can get this eyesore out of here." But she wasn't alone. Just a few feet away, 2 men leaned against an unmarked sedan. They'd been watching the whole thing, and when the lock hit the ground, they moved. Ma'am put the cutters down. One of them barked, flashing a badge. Judith's head snapped toward them. "Excuse me, who do you think you are? This is private property. I'm with the HOA board." The officer didn't flinch. "Step away from the vehicle, now." Neighbors started peeking out their doors, some stepping onto balconies with their coffee mugs. I could feel eyes on me, on her, on the Jeep. It was one of those moments where the world just slowed down. I stepped forward. "That's my car," I said, voice tight. "She just cut my lock." Judith turned toward me, that fake, patronizing smile plastered on her face. "Adrian, I thought it was abandoned. You know the rules, we can't have suspicious vehicles left unsecured." "Suspicious," I shot back. "You've seen me drive this Jeep every day for years. What's suspicious about that?" The officer turned to me, his tone steady but serious. "Sir, your vehicle is part of an active investigation. We've been monitoring it. This individual just interfered with that." A ripple of gasps spread through the crowd. Judith's smile vanished. Her jaw went slack. For once, she didn't have a quick comeback. And I just stood there staring at her, the woman who'd spent years acting like she owned the place, being treated like a suspect in front of everyone. You'd think that would be the end of it, right? That maybe finally she'd realize she'd gone too far. But no. People like Judith don't back down. They rewrite the story. By that afternoon, she'd sent an email to the entire community titled "Clarification on this morning's incident." She called it a misunderstanding. Said she was acting in the community's best interest. Not a single word of apology, just more justification. I remember sitting at my kitchen table reading that email, my jaw locked so tight it hurt. She was turning herself into the victim. And somehow it was working. By evening I was hearing whispers. At the pool, some residents said Judith was just doing her job. Others said I'd overreacted. Even the guy at the corner store asked me about it. "You're the one with the Jeep right crazy story, man. Heard the HOA lady almost got arrested." I laughed it off, but inside, I was exhausted, angry, embarrassed. For years I'd tried to stay under the radar, and now my name was in every mouth within 5 miles. That night I sat staring at the lock I'd replaced. I couldn't shake the image of Judith crouched beside my car, like she had the right to decide what I could own, what belonged, and what didn't. For a moment I started to wonder, maybe she's right. Maybe keeping my head down all these years had made me invisible. Maybe silence wasn't peace. Maybe it was surrender. I felt done. Done with her, with the HOA, with pretending I didn't care. But I also didn't know what to do. Then came a knock on my door. It was Paula, my neighbor. She handed me a folder. "You're not alone, Adrian," she said. Inside were copies of violation letters Judith had sent her over flower pots, doormats, even the color of her patio chair. All signed Vice President Judith Madsen. That night I called Luis, another neighbor. "She's spinning it like I'm the problem," I told him. He sighed. "You've been quiet long enough, man. It's time people see who she really is." The next morning I filed a formal complaint, and later that week an officer came by to take my statement. He told me what I already suspected: Judith's interference could have jeopardized their operation. They were considering charges. For the first time in years I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not revenge, just resolve. 2 weeks later the HOA called an emergency meeting. Word spread fast. That night the community room was packed, residents standing in the back, arms crossed, waiting for fireworks. I sat in the middle, silent. Judith was at the front, shoulders squared, binder in hand, like she was ready to defend herself in court. The HOA president, George, cleared his throat. "We're here to address the incident involving board member Judith Madsen and resident Adrian Colebrook." A low murmur ran through the crowd. Judith stood up immediately. "I acted in good faith," she began, voice sharp, confident. "The vehicle appeared abandoned. I've repeatedly reminded this community that standards must be maintained. I will not apologize for protecting our property values." I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. I stood slowly. "Protecting property values doesn't mean cutting through someone's lock," I said. "You knew that Jeep was mine, Judith. You've seen me drive it every single day. You didn't enforce a rule, you violated trust." The room went still. Then Paula raised her hand. "She's been doing this for years. I've got a stack of her letters right here." Tanya, another neighbor, stood up. "You target who you want and ignore everyone else. You've made people afraid to speak up." Judith's smile faltered. "This isn't about favoritism. This is about standards." Luis jumped in, voice booming. "Standards. You broke a man's lock in broad daylight and interfered with police. That's not standards, that's obsession." The crowd erupted, some clapping, others shouting. For once the room wasn't under her control. George raised his hands for quiet. "We'll take a vote," he said. "All those in favor of removing Judith Madsen from the HOA board, raise your hands." It was like a wave. Hands shot up everywhere. More than half, then 2/3. The sound of applause filled the room. Judith just stood there, face red, jaw trembling. "You're making a mistake," she hissed. "You'll regret this when this place falls apart." She grabbed her binder, stormed out, and slammed the door so hard it rattled the windows. And just like that, years of fear and frustration seemed to crack open all at once. People started talking, really talking for the first time in years. About fairness. About how silence had let her power grow unchecked. I didn't cheer. I didn't feel victorious. I just sat there staring at that empty doorway, feeling steady. Later that night, as I locked my Jeep, new lock, new sense of calm, I looked around the quiet parking lot. No one watching, no notes on my door, just peace. And I realized something: Judith hadn't just broken a lock. She'd forced me to face the truth. That peace isn't the absence of conflict, it's the presence of respect. So here's what I learned: when people like Judith think they can control you through fear, silence only feeds them. Speak up. Protect your space. And remember, respect doesn't begin with rules on paper. It begins with how you treat the person who parks next to you.